can you introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, first of all. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, so my name is Tanja. I work for ThoughtWorks, a software consultancy. I'm based in Berlin. And I started as a business analyst at ThoughtWorks. So I've been in developing all kinds of digital products, basically for all of my professional life. That's all I can do. Also have a background in UX design. Yeah, I'm currently transitioned actually to a product manager role still within ThoughtWorks. And I've recently, or actually since I joined ThoughtWorks, which is about 3 years ago, I've digged a bit deeper into technical products or products for developers, for technical users. So I've worked with infrastructure teams, for example, and have been in these projects as a business analyst, trying to bringing in the product mindset and the product focus, so we really deliver value to our clients. And I'm currently working with data teams, also trying to bring in the product focus, because that is also good for data products.
That's great. Tanja, I've seen a couple of your blogs on ThoughtWorks and also some of your talks on the DevOps conference and ThoughtWorks hosted events on talking about developer experience. Can you tell me, like, what is developer experience from your perspective?
Mm-hmm. I think it's actually user experience for developers. So for users of more technical products, I wouldn't say it's not very different. If you read about developer experience, some people write, yeah, developers are humans too. Yeah, they are. So they also want to have products or tools that are easy to use. They have jobs to be done. They want to do their jobs. They want to build a good products. And that's more fun and more efficient if they do it with tools that are easy to use. So it's user experience for developers, I would say.
Yeah.
Tying back to what I just said, developers have to do their job, right? And companies hire developers to build products for their customers. And the faster development teams can do that, or the more they can try things out, what work, that's what product teams do, right? Try out new features, try out new products, show them to the customer, see if the customer like that, ideally in a lean kind of fashion, and then iterate and provide more value to the users. So that's actually something that all the companies are looking for, right? Have products that delight the customers, and ideally have this with a fast time to market. So the easier it is for developers that you have hired, and probably that's not we all know this is not easy these days. So if you hire developers and you give them an old-fashioned tech stack or some environment that does not help them do their job, you're kind of wasting their time, and you do not achieve what you actually want to do. You want your developers to build great products for your own customers. So a good developer experience just accelerates the time to market, and it also encourages, and that's probably another different point, it encourages teams to try out new things, right? So we all know we have to do user research, products are complex. The better you know what your customers want, the better product you can build for them, the better it is for your business. But teams need to try out new things or have the ability to try out new things. So if again, a developer has a hard time, just to give one example, a hard time to scale resources, that allows them to try out something new. Or how would my product behave if we had a bigger load, right? So if users don't want to wait forever, if a page loads or something happens online, if they don't have this possibility to try this out easily, they might not do it, and they might get frustrated and say, okay, just do my job. I don't try out new things. So experimentation is also something, or experimentation is something that actually enables innovation, right? So if that is made too difficult for any kind of employee, I think they would just say, oh no, don't bother. I'd rather go home instead of trying something out which I have to spend like 3-4 more hours on that. And then I also mentioned already, it's probably hard these days to find tech talent. So we all want to work with modern software tools we all work in software development, product development. We want to work with new tools. We want to try out new products, new techniques. And if a developer finds a company that has an old tech stack and everything is tedious, even if the onboarding is tedious, I see this with a lot of clients we are working at. So we go in with our teams and it takes us a week or two to actually be onboarded before one of our developers can write code. This is not only a waste of time, it's also frustrating. And I think if you want to attract tech talent, this is something you should look at, because competition is now harsh. And this could be a really competitive advantage in finding tech talent. So these are just 3 reasons. Do have a faster time to market. It's a basis for experimentation. Also, it helps you find good developers.
That's great. I have 2 follow-up questions on that. Did you find any kind of challenges to influence your stakeholders to get onboarded for this value the developer experience?
Yeah, I think it's not an easy thing to do. So it needs some patience, some consulting. I see this with also clients I work for. I think it's again involving and making it transparent, also using words that business stakeholders understand, or really have concrete examples. A concrete example, currently I'm working with the data team, and we can clearly say how long it took us to be onboarded until the first developer could actually write code. We didn't find a good infrastructure stack. We found a lot of single point of failure. So just the sheer time and saying, okay, look, this is the time we needed to onboard. This is something that everybody understands. And I think this is often not made transparent to business stakeholders. What else can I think of? Infrastructure, for example. Also working with the infrastructure team, we wanted to build data products in that case. We found a lot of obstacles, and we couldn't even use out-of-the-box services, for example, on AWS. So we decided, after trying to get access, because there was no self-service platform, there was no infrastructure team that allowed this for development team to do their jobs fast. We actually rebuilt AWS services that are actually there out of the box, because it just took us too long to get access to it. So to really put this, this is what can be, and this is what, or you're paying for this platform, and you wanted to have this platform, AWS in that case, to enable your teams to be faster, to be flexible, but it's actually not working because the organizational rules do not allow this. So I try to make this transparent. It's usually a longer journey. But I think it's worth it. And yeah, that's also what I see as my value, being on these teams, to really be the translator to the business side. And concrete examples are good. Also, deep feedback loops is one good thing. So if you show how long it takes to release something, and if you measure this over time, then you could also show progress to the business stakeholders. And that's usually something that everybody can understand.
That's great. One follow-up question on that, like, okay, I see that there's a potential ROI. How do a product team can discover there's a flaw in our developer experience? How can some product team can start identifying this? What are the actions they can take today?
Yeah, sure. It's actually not so difficult. And even internally, when I talk to other BAs, they often ask me, how Tanja, how do you do this working with development teams? How do you develop features for a platform? And then I actually say, oh, it's not so much different from developing any kind of digital product. It's doing proper user research, so find out who your customers are. You can draft personas. This is also a nice exercise doing inside some kind of a workshop way. And I really made very good experiences with this, because usually what I found is that developers that code for other developers, they always think their own needs are the needs of the other developers, which might be different, or most of the time it's different. So for example, infrastructure developers, they have different needs than application developers have, right? And do this in some kind of a workshop conversational way helps not only understand everybody or myself, what we need to do, but also the developers on my team, what their customers, how their customer wishes are different. And sometimes there's also misunderstandings that get clarified. So personas is one thing to see also, is there different kind of maturities, right? So one concrete example is when I worked with a platform team, we had development teams that had to migrate from a platform to a cloud platform. And some teams, they were very mature. They knew how to deal with cloud, with Kubernetes, setting up clusters. They knew that already. But others, they were very, very, they didn't know yet how this would work. So this was overwhelming for them. And finding this out, so you can actually also tailor your services. Some might need more support, others less support, others might need, we would talk to them and help them to migrate a bit the closer they got to the migration. So this also helps, or junior, do you have more junior developer or more mature developers or senior developers? And then apart from and you said earlier, how can you draft the journey? So again, developer journeys is also something you could do. That's actually something that I did when I first started, and I was a bit scared, or also how would I do like user journeys for developers, which actually just you ask them, okay, what's the steps you would do, and you draft it and you visualize it. And then you look at where probably at tasks that are very repetitive, you look how long the feedback loops are, and you tend to start with the tasks that are repetitive, because that provides then more value if you shorten the feedback loops, right? And then you do what you always do, you start with small features, you iterate on it, build, measure, learn, rinse and repeat. That is something. And if you want to, or one guidance I would say, or one tip I would give as a product manager or UX designer, at least for this discovery phase, because they know how to do these things. And I think the conversation between these different kind of skill sets is really, really valuable. And something I do a lot as a business analyst is asking why. So we also, in my team, we also write user stories for all kinds of technical tasks. And I think they're my biggest, I always say I just ask stupid questions, I ask why. And that helps the team also to focus and prioritize going forward, because there's amount of things you can do, right? Especially if developers can develop for other developers, there's a lot of exciting things to do with platforms in particular. So it's basically applying product thinking, and the tools or techniques that you will also use for other products work very well for me.
Okay, that's great. So it's more like understanding the why, doing a research, discovery phase, trying to get, why we are building this for whom, like what are their frustrations, and trying to map their journey, like what are the ways we can improve. I think you touched on the topic of technical user stories. Maybe can you talk a little bit more on that? Like how does technical user stories look for developer experience focused features or improvements? Do you consider more like a metric to measure it, or you have more like a need, like this is a need, this is a frustration, this is a problem we are solving, how do we measure the success? Or maybe can you talk on that, technical user stories?
Yeah, so measuring success is always a good idea. I talked about the why. So when you have the user story format as whatever I want to, so that is why we do it, right? So I often turn this around by saying in order to, we want to, because I often, when I started working with development teams, often the so that is neglected, though I think it's the most important part. And this, interestingly, it helped me understand what actually needed to be done. So I have more like a UX background. I've worked with digital products for all of my business life, but I'm not a coder. So I can read code, I can copy paste code, and it kind of works, but I don't code myself. So it helped me to understand the nitty-gritty details as well. And asking the why repetitively. And what I noticed, that I not only, it made me understand why we would do things, and it would help me prioritize them. To me, the why is how the key for prioritization. But I also saw that other developers in my team, then they started having like an argument. They were like, oh, I thought we do this for a different reason. Isn't it for XYZ? And that's what the user story is about, right? It's not just these 3 lines, it's the conversation. And in this conversation, we found out a lot of misunderstanding that would have probably fired back once we started picking up a story. And and this was the basis to writing acceptance criteria and agreeing on how would we as a development team know if this story is done. That's basically how I would work with technical stories, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. When you said about it's the user story is about, it's not about writing some given when, then it's more about conversation. It reminds me the Jeff Patton's talk, and Ken Beck's like, hey, why the user story name came because of the conversation where we clarify unknowns and we talk and we more do a conversation so that we all agree that this is a problem. That makes totally sense. So you said it's more like it opens up a kind of a shared understanding between the developer, and asking this repetitive why kind of gives you more clarity on what's important, and also kind of clarifies why from a developer perspective as well. Great.
And maybe one thing I noticed as well is when we did this refinement together of the stories, the developers tend to focus very fast on how things are done, and I totally understand this. And there, my role was to bring this up again to the, okay, why are we doing it? Let's write acceptance criteria, and you can later think, once to pick up the story, about how this is done. But we first want to think about why we're doing this, what we are doing, and then we would prioritize it. And that would then help also the product owner to understand in which order we would do what we were doing.
Totally makes sense. So it's more like understanding the need, what is the pain, then we can have any number of solution instead of just jumping into a solution. So staying in the problem space, get the clarity on the problem space.
Exactly.
Totally makes sense. Do you have any advice for product teams who wanted to focus on developer experience? What are the things they should consider so that they can also achieve a greater developer experience?
Yeah, I think we touched on a few things. So it's, again, the basis is adopt this product mindset, or applying this product thinking to these products. You could add a product manager to the team, or UX designer, business analyst, that more facilitates the conversation and focuses, again, why and who's the customer. Can we look at it journey? Are we solving the right problems? And in which order would we solve these problems? And we also touched already on the developer experience, which gives really good insights on the path, on the touch points, and again, on the problems that there might be to improve the effectiveness. And when you look at the journey, then you find feedback loops usually. That I think that's very good. I mentioned it earlier, also showing these feedback loops that developers are going through usually is also easy to understand, actually, for the business, and from my experience. And if you improve these frequent workflows, especially, then you can create value very fast. And again, build, measure, learn. You do something, you measure, and you see if you've actually improved this, right? And then there's another, a bit more. So you can measure these things very easily, right? Something that's not so easy to achieve and also not so easy to measure is like encouraging collaboration. It's probably not so much for the product teams. This is more for the company in itself. Encourage collaboration between different teams, right? We all know DevOps is working, developers and former ops teams working closer together, bridging the gap there. This could also be the case for other teams, depending on how the teams are split. There could also be collaboration can also give more way or create possibilities for innovation, share knowledge. This is also important point, sharing knowledge, I think, between different kind of development teams, infrastructure teams and application teams. I think this is very valuable also for knowledge sharing, understanding each other's pain points best. And again, more like a call out to management is creating really a culture where team members feel safe, because if people feel safe, they dare to ask the difficult questions. They dare to bring maybe not so good news. But this, when you look at this from a learning mindset, then I think this is a big potential to improve how teams work, how they develop products that are good for the customer of the business. So this is more like the soft part. That is probably not so hands-on for the teams. This is more for the company, but a team can already start, right? If you, within a team, you do postmortems and you share experiences with your team members, and then you dare to try out mobile things, and nobody is blamed when something goes wrong, and you learn and you try something new.
That's great. I think you touched one thing on a build, measure, learn, and you talked about loops. Do you find any ways we can measure metrics to experience, or some of the ways we can measure the developer experience from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there is a different kind of metrics you can have. I mean, there is these from the State of DevOps reports, you have the 4 key metrics. These are, so for example, time the developer writes code to when a feature is released, development frequency, for example. These are some that are pretty popular. They're not the only ones, and they are very, I think they are good to measure, and they're also they can be measured, but you need some kind of a baseline. That sometimes is the difficulty. You have to start measuring at one point to see when you are improving. And then I would also encourage to do more like qualitative research. That can be like surveys. For example, what I have done with a team when we built a new platform. We asked the teams that were supposed to migrate to the new platform, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the support in the old platform? How would you rate the possibilities to scale resources? How's the availability? So we found like 4 or 5 criteria, and we asked them how they will rate this. And then we would do this a year later when they had migrated to our platform to see, have we actually reached our goals? Have we made their lives better? Have the pain points that they had before, are they gone, or are they less painful? So there's like quantitative measurements and there's also qualitative measurements.
Yeah, makes totally sense. Do you have any kind of favorite product or kind of you inspired? They are doing a great product developer experience.
Yes, this is kind of not a difficult question, but a lot of so there's products that are commercial products used by developers, right? I don't know, a lot of payment services. This is important, and that you can also measure developer experience by how often does a developer call the API or actually use the API to integrate, for example, a payment system. This is another way to measure depending on the product, but a lot of developer experience happens internally, right? This is not visual to the outside. But if I have to mention one product, I think that was internal and became external, there is this one developer portal open source platform, I would call it. That's called Backstage from Spotify. So this is what Spotify started to enable their internal development teams, where the teams can organize their tools, resources, documentation. And this apparently worked so well that this is now an open source product and used by other companies as well. So I think this is something to look at. If I would look into tools that are open, developer experience that is proven. I also see, for example, I don't know, Stripe, I think the payment service, I think they're very successful with what they're doing. And there's also interesting articles to read on how they did that. And then, yeah, that is something I would look for. Yeah.
Okay. Any blogs or any people to follow, or any kind of books you recommend for to get more thoughts on the developer experience and how to bring greater developer experience you'd like to share?
So this was actually an interesting question, because there's not this one blog I would look at on developer experience. And when I started working with development teams and I started Googling it, there was not much out there yet. But what I did and what I still do is I follow engineering blogs from different companies that I think have a good developer experience from what I can tell from outside. So this is, apart from Spotify, this is probably Netflix. They have great culture for their developers, very experimental culture, I would say. Airbnb. So I follow also for me to understand a bit better what's important for developers. And there I get some inspiration. Apart from that, if I can mention some ThoughtWorks resources. So I have looked at a colleague of mine, Tim Cochran. He's the technical director in the US East. So he wrote a lot about developer effectiveness. And especially he has a nice collection of feedback loops. So this is when you Google Tim Cochran, ThoughtWorks, and developer effectiveness. He wrote a very nice article that was a big inspiration for me. And another colleague from the UK, Max Griffiths, he focuses a lot, or his topic is platform as a product. And he also has done some talks on that. And there you can get some nice metrics apart from the 4 key metrics as well. So that also served as an inspiration for me, because he has worked with different teams, especially very traditional companies and also like more startup companies. So you would probably measure different things, and they have different challenges. So that is something that was an inspiration for me.
That's great. It was really great hearing your thoughts and experience. Thank you very much, Tanja.